that I read in January. So let's get started. The first book I read was Champion by Marie Lu. I don't have the book right now, so here's a beautiful picture to sit on the screen while I talk. I love Champion. It is the final book in the Legend trilogy by Marie Lu, and I thought it was amazing. I loved the character development, especially in this book. The whole series is about two people called June and Day, and June is a girl, child prodigy, and she's from the rich sector in the Republic, which is like a futuristic United States of America, and Day is a wanted criminal, and they've never found him. They've never been able to record him because technically on the Republic's databases he doesn't exist. And so it's a really interesting story, really gripping tale. I loved it, flew through the series. It was one of my favorite series of all time. Loved it, amazing, 5 stars out of 5. So the second book that I read this month was 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This book I loved. I got it for Christmas and I read it over the holidays, and just the cover is beautiful. It's amazing, and when you read the book you really understand the cover, because at the top is a picture of the London skyline, and at the bottom there's a picture of the Russian skyline. And so 1,000 Pieces of You is a book about a girl called Marguerite Kane, and she's grown up her entire life with these scientist parents in this kind of science-based family. The parents are physicists and they're amazing scientists. They've discovered all these new theories, and Marguerite's kind of different because she likes painting and art and she doesn't really like the whole science scene. But through a tale of events, you know, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, Marguerite goes on this epic tale jumping through dimensions, and it's just really interesting, and it's a really well-made book because each world that she jumps into is different, it's unique, and it's really well thought out and well planned. This is the first book in a trilogy, I believe, but it's the only book that's been released so far, so we'll have to wait till the next books come out. I really liked it. I gave this 4 stars out of 5. So make sure you read this book. The third book I read this month was a book that I've been trying to read for a long time, and that was Angel Fall by Susan E. or Susan E.E. I'm not really sure how to say her last name, but this is an amazing story about angels and kick-ass heroines and amazing characters with kind of like crazy parents, or her mum is really crazy. So this is a story about a girl called Penryn, and she lives in a world, or in a futuristic world, where angels have taken over the planet. So they've descended out of the skies and they've taken over the planet, they've killed heaps of people, and one day she sees a fallen angel, I guess you could call it, an angel with his wings cut off on the ground, and she meets this angel and they go on this epic journey together because her sister has been taken away by a group of angels, so she's trying to get her sister back. And I loved this book. It was so funny. I was just laughing. I don't think I've laughed this much in a book in ages. It was hilarious. I loved it so much. It was so funny. The characters were really unique and fresh. I've read a lot of books lately with kind of the same characters, and these ones were just so unique. I loved her mum, and if you've read this book, you know that her mum is just amazing. It's kind of crazy, and it's action-packed. It's really, really good. This was probably one of my favorite books of the month, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars out of 5. Amazing. You have to go read this book. It is awesome, and it's not too big, so no excuses. The fourth book I read this month was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you don't know what The Hobbit is about, I'm not sure where you've been for the past 20 years, but it's a story about Bilbo Baggins, and he is a hobbit and he lives in Bag End in his little hobbit hole, and hobbits don't go on adventures. They're little creatures that live in their houses and they just love a pleasant, calm life. And one day Gandalf the Great, Gandalf the Wizard, comes to his house and tells Bilbo to go on an epic adventure with him, and Bilbo's kind of like, no thank you, but he ends up going on the adventure. And The Hobbit, as you can see, is an amazing book. I loved it. It was funny, the movies are great, but the book was awesome. I loved the stories, I loved the songs, I loved how it was written, and I don't know why I haven't picked up this book. I don't know, I was just always a little bit put off by it, but it was awesome. I think everybody should read this. It's just it's kind of a classic tale. I don't know if you could call The Hobbit a classic, but I'd call it a classic because, you know, it's amazing. And the story was great, the plotline was really good. I was kind of hooked into it, you know, I was never really bored. I loved this book, so I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. The 5th book I read this month was Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. This book, oh my goodness, I loved it so much. I haven't watched the movie yet, but I'm going to watch it. This book is a quartet, I believe, so a 4-book series by Orson Scott Card, and the story is about the main character called Ender, and he is kind of a child prodigy. For his whole life, him and his brother and sister, older brother and sister, have been watched by the government or the International Fleet, and the International Fleet selects young children to be trained as soldiers to fight against aliens in outer space. So they're not trained, but they're observed as children, and if the International Fleet deems them worthy to become soldiers, they will pick them and they'll take them to battle school, which is an out of space training school where they fight in zero gravity, and it's really cool. But Ender is kind of different, and he has a lot of character development in this book that I just loved. This book was beautifully created, just everything about it I loved. It was so interesting, I couldn't stop reading, it just kept me hooked, and the characters, oh, I just fell in love with Ender, and I felt his pain and I felt his struggles when, you know, he was sad, and things he went through just hit me hard. I loved this book so much, and I think I'm going to do a separate book talk on this because I feel like it deserves it. It's just, I could talk for days on about different things that happened in this book that were amazing, and I just loved it. I've always been kind of put off by science fiction. I don't know, I've just had this stereotype that I don't like it. I've tried reading some science fiction before, but I just haven't liked it, and maybe that's because it's mostly been adult science fiction. I don't know, I'm not even sure if this is young adult. I think it is though. But I don't know, I just really have never liked science fiction and alien books, but this book just threw it out of the park. It was amazing. It was relatable, which is what I really like in science fiction books. I feel like sometimes you can't really relate with the storyline or the characters because they're so different. You know, they're aliens, they're from outer space, but this book is so relatable. Things that happen to Ender might be similar things that have happened to you. You can feel similar emotions to Ender. It was just amazing. I recommend everybody go read this. Don't be put off by the aliens or the outer space. If you really don't like those kind of things, you're going to love this book. It was just amazing and I loved it. Make sure you guys read it. I just want to read the blurb on the back because I think it's pretty cool. To save mankind, they need a hero, but are they creating a monster? Ooh, so it's really good. I loved everything about this book. I'm probably ranting right now, but it was amazing. Go read it right now. The last book that I read this month was 1984 by George Orwell. I actually had to read this book for school, so that's why it's kind of different from the rest of the dystopian science fiction-y novels, but 1984 was amazing. I've read Animal Farm by George Orwell, and it was just amazing. George Orwell is a genius. He just knows about the world so much, even though that he passed away like 60 years ago. The things that he writes about can be relatable to every time period, and I loved it. So 1984 is a book about a man called Winston, and he lives in a futuristic society. In this futuristic London, Oceania it's called, there is a ruling government called the Party, and there's a ruling figure called Big Brother, and Big Brother watches over everybody. There are telescreens, which I'm pretty sure are just like cameras, but also like TVs as well, and they have microphones, so they watch your every single move. You're always being watched in this society, and you can't escape the watchful eye of Big Brother. You know, he's always watching you, always making sure that you're not committing any crimes. Even thinking a bad thought in this society is counted as a crime, and you could be punished or killed for that. So it's a very strict society that I personally would not want to live in. There are 4 ministries the Ministry of Peace, the Ministry of Love, the Ministry of Truth, and the Ministry of Plenty. And Winston works in the Ministry of Truth, and they concern themselves with news and entertainment and past historical records. So Winston works in the records department, and basically he has to rewrite history so that it complies with the party's rules that are today. If something that they published in the past year contradicted something that they believe in now, then all the records and all the documents from that stated that certain thing have to be rewritten so that there is nothing to contradict or compromise what the party is saying. So they use lies and deception, and they use propaganda to spread all these false messages about the party and the great good it's doing, and all these facts and figures that say life is so much better, and the people believe it because they have nothing to compare to. All of their past documents, all the history has been practically erased or rewritten, so they have nothing to compare to. They can't say, I don't like this regime because it was better before, because they don't remember what it was like before, and they have nothing to say what it was like before. There's no history, there's no records, everything has been ruined. It's such an interesting book. It's very complex. It makes you think. From the start of the book, you're thinking about these really complex ideas in politics and in government, and you don't have to know the slightest thing about how government works or politics or anything like that. You can read it anyway. So if you're looking for meaningful, deep, kind of insightful book that you want to read, I recommend 1984. George Orwell is just, you can't go wrong with George Orwell. So this month I read 6 books plus Champion, but you can just pretend it's here, and I loved all of them. If you want separate reviews on each of, or whatever books you want, just make sure you comment down below, let me know which books you want to see reviews on, and I'll make them in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed this January wrap up, and I'll be trying to do one each month, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to read over the school period when it starts, because I was in holidays for all of January, so I got to read, as much as I wanted to. So I'll see you guys in my next video. If you have recommendations for videos, as you know I'm doing new kinds of videos with my channel, then feel free to leave them in the comments of this video or in my previous video, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! Also, let me know if you guys have read these books and if you liked them down in the comments below. I feel like I'm giving so many books this month really good ratings, and I guess that's kind of good, but I feel like I've just read heaps of really good books this month.